Hello everyone. Moving right along in this PowerPoint presentation, we're going to be covering the thigh as part of the lower limb. The femur, which is the biggest bone in our body, is the single bone, which is going to be located in the thigh region. It will articulate superiorly with the hip bone right over here, and it will articulate inferiorly with the tibia at the knee joint. The patella will only articulate with the distal end of the femur. In the next slide, we'll start to cover a few of the bone features of the femur, but notice here how the head of the femur will articulate with that socket, which is the acetabulum of the hip bone. The femur, which is also called the thigh bone, is actually the longest and, like I said, the heaviest and strongest bone in the body. Its proximal end will articulate with the acetabulum of the hip through the head of the femur, and the distal end will articulate with the tibia and the patella. The patella will articulate right over here in this surface that's called the patellar surface. Now notice how the body or the shaft of the femur is going to have an angle that will be medial. Therefore, the knee joint is going to be more medial than the hip joint. And this angle of the femoral shaft is going to be greater in females because the female pelvis is going to be broader, and this is important during labor. Now, like I said, the femur has a head, which will articulate with the acetabulum. Right below the head is what we call the neck. And then on the posterior view, we can see that it has a trochanter, which is this large projection that will be important for muscle attachment. We're going to have a greater trochanter, which is more lateral, and a lesser trochanter, which is more medial. Now, a lot of times we get the trochanters confused with the tubercle because we have a greater tubercle and a lesser tubercle, and a greater trochanter and a lesser trochanter. Remember that the greater and lesser tubercles are on the humerus. The way that I remember and try not to get confused is that the humerus has the intertubercular groove between the two tubercles. So try to remember this bone feature of the humerus, which is the intertubercular groove, and then you can remember that the humerus has a tubercle and not a trochanter. Therefore, the femur will have a trochanter and not a tubercle. And coming down right over here, there's a rough spot, again posteriorly, that's called the gluteal tuberosity. Now, gluteal tuberosity means that the gluteal muscles, which are your butt muscles, will insert posteriorly right over here. So this is your gluteal tuberosity. Continuous with the gluteal tuberosity is this long line over here that projects posteriorly, which is called the linea aspera. And it does go all the way down over here. And like the name says, linea is a line and aspera is rough. So it's a rough line and it's located on the posterior side of the femur. On the lateral side, we're going to have what we call a lateral condyle. And on the medial side, a medial condyle. How do I know that this side is medial and this side is lateral? Remember, I told you that if it has a head, it will articulate medially. There's no point in having the head sticking on the outside, right, on the lateral side. So always look for the head. Therefore, the head is pointing to the medial side. And a condyle means that it's a smooth, round, articulating surface. And this is exactly what the condyles are. A smooth, round, articulating surface that will articulate with the tibia. And we will see this later on. But on top of the condyles, we're going to have also, just like the humerus, epicondyles that will be these rough projections right over here that will serve for muscle attachment. So on the medial side, we have the medial epicondyle, and on the lateral side, we have a lateral epicondyle. Now, don't let, again, the epicondyle get you confused because it's not a smooth, round, articulating surface. Epicondyle just means that it's a structure that's on top of the condyle, on top of the smooth articulating surface. This slide is just to show you in more details the bone features of the femur in an anterior view. Again, this will be the head. Right below the head is the neck. We can see a little bit of the lesser trochanter right over here medially. And on the distal end, we can see the smooth part over here, which is the patella surface, where the patella will articulate. And on the lateral side, I'm going to have the lateral epicondyle. And on the medial side, I will have the medial epicondyle. How do I know that this is medial and this is lateral? By looking at the head. Therefore, this is going to be medial and this is going to be lateral. When you guys get tested, you will always be able to see the head and it will be inserted on the image. Here on this slide, we'll be able to see the bone features in a posterior view. This will be the head. This is the greater trochanter, lesser trochanter. In between, right over here, we have the neck. Coming down, this would be your gluteal tuberosity. Continues with the linea aspera. Again, continues with the linea aspera on the distal end. Here will be your medial condyle, your lateral condyle. This would be your lateral epicondyle, medial epicondyle. With regards to the patella, there's really not much to talk about. We don't go over the bone features of the patella. You just need to know that it is a sesamoid bone. And this would be the anterior view, and the smoother part would be the posterior view, which is the part that will articulate with the femur on the patella surface. Now the patella will be part of the knee joint. Like I said, is a sesamoid bone, and it will sit within the tendon of the quadriceps femoris muscle. So this is part of the quadriceps femoris. And you can see how the patella is encased within this tendon that will end and insert right over here on the tibia, more specifically on the tibial tuberosity, which we will talk later on when we cover the tibia. But this is your femur, this is your tibia, and this over here is your patella inside of the tendon.